Imagine this. You're out in the yard, maybe getting a bit sweaty mowing the lawn, and right behind you, your tiny kid is pushing a toy mower, just totally mirroring you. Or maybe it's the toy shaving kit, Every time you shave, they're right there. It's super cute, obviously. But it's also like a snapshot of something way deeper. This isn't just cute play. It's a glimpse into a really fundamental human thing: copying. And today we're doing a deep dive into this whole fascinating world of copying and social learning. Our mission to figure out not just why we copy, but how strategic copying actually shaped us as a species. And we'll uncover some genuinely surprising stuff, challenge some old ideas, all thanks to this amazing scientific tournament that literally pitted copying strategies against each other. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's something developmental psychologists have looked at for decades. That really intense mirroring you see in young kids, say 2 to 4 years old, that's a critical phase. They mostly copy people they identify with, people they're attached to. It does lessen as they get older, but the tendency, it never fully disappears.
It's just so fundamental, isn't it? My son did that for ages with his toy mower, and his little sister would even copy him sometimes, even when it clearly, hurt. It makes you wonder, could this early copying be more than just, adorable? Could it have been, pivotal in how the human mind even evolved?
Oh, absolutely. That's a strong hypothesis. Think about Albert Bandura's classic Bobo doll experiments back in the 60s. He showed kids could pick up aggressive behavior just by watching adults. They weren't directly rewarded or anything. They just saw it and then often did it themselves. That was huge for psychology. It really proved learning happens through observation, not just, direct reinforcement. And of course, it's not just aggression. Kids learn countless useful things this way, too.
Right. But when we talk about copying, there's this common idea that humans just copy mindlessly, like slavish imitation. But that's not really right, is it? We don't all burst into song just because we watched a musical.
Exactly. And the worry about violent media is there. And studies do show correlations, but it's complicated. Most people watch a violent movie and don't become, a vicious fiend. Things like copycat crimes or suicides, like that spike after Marilyn Monroe's death, they happen, but they're statistical outliers, often linked to other issues, like mental health.
Yeah, millions heard about her death and didn't follow suit. So it sounds like we're actually discriminating copiers. How does that work for us? Are there times we're bad at it, or maybe where it's tricky?
That's a great point. We are discriminating, but it's not perfect. Take something called over-imitation. That's when kids copy actions that seem totally irrelevant to the task, like tapping a puzzle box before opening it, even if the tap does nothing. For ages, people thought, okay, that's inefficient, unselective. But what's interesting is it often seems to have a social reason, maybe conforming or showing respect for the person teaching them. And actually, in more realistic settings, like studies where a task gets passed down a chain of people, kids are pretty quick to figure out which actions are useless and just drop them. So even copying that looks irrational might have some logic, or it gets corrected pretty fast.
Okay, let's dig into how we actually learn stuff. There seem to be two main ways, right? A social learning and social learning. What's the basic difference?
Right. So a social learning is basically learning on your own, trial and error, figuring things out yourself by interacting with the world. You experiment, maybe fail, try again. Social learning, on the other hand, that's getting information from others, watching them, imitating, maybe being taught directly.
And there are definite trade-offs involved. Like with most things in nature, there's a cost and a benefit.
Oh, for sure. A social learning can be really costly. It takes time, energy, could even be dangerous, finding new food, avoiding predators. But the information you get is usually accurate, reliable, and totally up to date for your specific situation. Social learning, much cheaper. You just watch someone else. But the risk is you pick up outdated information or something that worked for them but isn't right for you, especially if the world's changing fast.
Okay, so it's a bit like those studies of, say, birds in a flock. Some birds find the food, they're the producers, and others just watch and follow the scroungers, and usually there's a kind of balance.
That's a really good analogy, yeah. Nature often finds an equilibrium where both strategies pay off about the same. If being a scrounger suddenly becomes way better, more birds will start scrounging until it balances out again. The same idea applies to learning. Theory often predicts you'd get a mix of social and asocial learners in a population, and at equilibrium, they'd be doing equally well, fitness-wise.
Okay, but then, if copying is so basic for us, why was there this big puzzle for scientists for ages? something called Rogers' paradox, because apparently this anthropologist, Alan Rogers, made these mathematical models that predicted, at equilibrium, social learners are no better off than asocial learners. So why would humans rely so heavily on social learning if it doesn't actually give us an evolutionary leg up? That seems totally backwards, given, human culture and our massive population growth.
Yeah, that was a major riddle. Rogers' first models assumed pretty indiscriminate, kind of dumb copying. The key insight that came out of grappling with that paradox was this. If social learning is the key to human success, then our copying must be strategic. It can't just be mindless imitation. And that realization points directly to the idea of social learning strategies.
Right, so we're not just copying, we're copying smart. What kind of strategies do we mean?
Well, they usually fall into two big buckets. When strategies and who strategies. When strategies are about when you decide to copy. Like, maybe copy when learning on your own is really hard, or risky, think complex tool making. Or copy when you're unsure, like if you're in a totally new place. Or even just copy if what you're currently doing isn't working well, and you figure someone else must know better.
And whose strategies? That sounds like choosing your role models.
Exactly. These guide you on who to learn from. Maybe copy what most people are doing, the majority. Or copy the person who seems most successful, or most prestigious. Or copy your family, or maybe older, more experienced people who've likely figured things out. All these have been studied.
But wow, if there are so many options, copy the majority, copy the successful, copy when you fail, how on earth do researchers figure out the best strategy? That sounds like a massive computational headache.
Oh, it is, absolutely. Traditional math models, they can only really handle comparing a few strategies at once. The potential space of strategies is just enormous. There could be way better strategies out there nobody's even thought of yet. Which brings up this other puzzle. How can animals that aren't exactly, Einstein's like fruit flies or crickets manage to use social learning effectively if it takes super complex calculations? It was a genuine evolutionary mystery.
Okay, so the math alone couldn't crack it. It needed something totally different, something revolutionary. And that's where this social learning strategies tournament comes in. It was inspired by Robert Axelrod's famous tournaments for the prisoner's dilemma, the ones that made breakthroughs in understanding cooperation.
That's exactly right. The idea was, let's set up a similar competition, a big tournament, but for learning strategies. Designing the game itself was critical. They ended up using this framework called the multi-armed restless bandit. Picture a slot machine. Okay, but instead of one arm, it's got 100. And each arm has a different payoff probability. But, and this is key, those probabilities are constantly changing.
A restless bandit. Because the world keeps changing, making it impossible to just figure out the single best option and stick with it. So the agents, these hypothetical critters in the simulation, are trying to survive, choosing behaviors like hunting or gathering, and they need to track which ones pay off best now.
Precisely. And in every round, an agent had three choices. They could innovate, that's a social learning, discover a new behavior and its payoff perfectly accurately. Or they could observe that social learning, copy a behavior and its payoff from someone else, but with a chance of error, like misjudging what they did or how well it worked. And finally, they could exploit, just perform a behavior they already know to collect the payoff and boost their fitness.
So the challenge for people entering the tournament was design a set of rules, a strategy for these agents to decide when to innovate, when to observe, and when to just exploit, all to maximize their fitness over time. And the tournament organizers would then run these strategies under different conditions, like how fast the environment changed or how error-prone observation was to see what worked best when.
Yeah, and this wasn't just a quick side project. It was huge. Took about 18 months, involved a whole committee of top experts from different fields. Even Robert Axelrod himself was involved, lending his expertise. From the cooperation tournaments, they had a brilliant postdoc, Luke Rindell, really driving the whole thing. It was a massive, coordinated effort.
And talk about taking a chance. The researchers were actually worried people wouldn't bother entering, but that fear, totally wrong. They got an incredible 104 entries from 15 different academic fields, 16 countries, way more than Axelrod got for his famous tournaments.
And what's really cool is who entered. Mostly academics, sure, but get this. 2 high school kids, Ralph Barton and Joshua Brolin from Winchester College in the UK, they submitted a strategy, and it came in 9th, outperforming loads of professors and mathematicians. They even got a special bonus prize. It just shows, the power of fresh thinking, open innovation.
That's fantastic. And you can really see how smart this approach was scientifically. For a prize of what, 10,000 yuan? They basically got hundreds of really smart people around the world to dedicate weeks, maybe months of their time to solving this super complex problem, incredibly cost-effective research.
Absolutely. And the results that came out, they were genuinely astonishing. Starting with the first big one, you can actually learn too much. Strategies that spent way too much time trying to innovate or observe, they did poorly. The winning strategies are the best ones. They only spent maybe 5 to 10% of their time learning. The rest of the time, just exploit what you already know works. Because every time you learn, you miss out on a guaranteed payoff. Learning has a cost.
Right, so it's about being efficient with learning, not just learning constantly.
No.
And when they did decide to learn, was one way better than the other, innovate versus observe.
Yeah, overwhelmingly for the top strategies, when they learned, they chose to observe to copy. So if you were going to spend time learning, copying was almost always the smarter move for the winners.
Interesting. But you said efficient copying.
Exactly. Because for the strategies that didn't do well, copying actually made things worse sometimes, which tells you that just copying isn't enough. You have to do it effectively, efficiently. It's not a magic bullet if you do it badly.
So what was the key factor then for the successful strategies? What made their copying smart?
Timing. Definitely timing. The really successful strategies were clever about when they learned. They tended to learn more right after the environment changed. That's when their existing behaviors started paying off less. So learning then increased the chances they'd pick up something new and better suited to the new conditions. The poorer strategies, they often learned at the wrong times, maybe picking up stuff they already knew or stuff that was about to become useless anyway.
And the overall winner was the strategy called discount machine, right? From Dan Cowden and Tim Lillicrap. What was its secret sauce? How did it manage the timing and decisions?
So discount machine was clever. Its main trick was it discounted information based on how old it was. Newer information was valued more highly than older stuff. And it could also sort of estimate the likely future payoffs from learning versus just exploiting. When we talk about mental time travel for it, obviously it's not building a time machine. It means it had this computational ability to remember past results and predict future possibilities based on different actions. It's like a sophisticated foresight, letting it plan beyond just the immediate next step.
Okay, that's pretty advanced. But how much of its success was down to that fancy planning versus just the fact it relied heavily on copying?
Great question. And Luke Rendell, the postdoc running things, did this really elegant experiment to find out. He made a mutant version of Discount Machine, identical in every way except one. Every single time the original would have chosen to observe, copy. The mutant was forced to innovate, learn on its own instead. The result, absolutely stunning. The innovate-only mutant came dead last.
Wow, dead last.
Dead last. It proved pretty definitively that Discount Machine's winning edge came overwhelmingly from its smart use of social learning, of copying. The planning helped, but the copying was crucial.
That's incredible. And it really flips some common ideas on their head, doesn't it? Like maybe thinking you need to watch lots of people to copy effectively. Or that if copying is error-prone, it's not worth it.
It absolutely does. The sheer robustness of copying was maybe the biggest surprise. Copying beat asocial learning, as you said, hands down, under almost all realistic conditions. A social learning only won out in environments that were changing incredibly fast, like over 50% of the behaviors becoming outdated each round. That's extremely rare in the real world. And it wasn't about needing to copy lots of individuals. Even copying just one other agent could still be highly effective. And get this, even when the error rates for observation were really high, like a 50% or even 70% chance of failing to correctly copy a better behavior, it still paid off to copy most of the time.
Okay, my mind is slightly blown. Why? Why is copying so powerful, even when it's inaccurate or you're only watching one person? What's the big aha moment here?
Right. This is the core insight, the real game changer from the tournament. Copying is so robust because other individuals filter information for you. Think about it. When agents exploit, what are they doing? They're performing behaviors that they've already found to be successful, right? Behaviors that work, that give good payoffs. They've done the trial and error already. So when you observe someone, you're not sampling from all possible random behaviors. You're sampling from a pool of already selected, tried and tested, high payoff behaviors. You're benefiting from the filtering they've already done. That makes it way more likely you'll pick up something good compared to just randomly innovating yourself.
Ah, so the observed individual does the hard work of figuring out what's good, and the copier just benefits from that effort. It's like getting pre-filtered intelligence.
Exactly. It's pre-filtered, pre-vetted information. And that explains the other riddle we talked about, why copying is so common even in animals that aren't considered super intelligent. The complex decision-making, the figuring out what works, that's done by the individual being observed. The copier just needs a simple rule. Copy what seems to work for others. That's why bumblebees, fruit flies, wood crickets can benefit, and for kids. Trusting and copying an adult is incredibly efficient because that adult has decades of filtered experience behind their actions.
Okay, connecting this back up,
Yeah.
this really seems to solve Roger's paradox then.
It absolutely does. The tournament clearly showed simple, inflexible copying, the kind Rogers modeled initially. Yeah, that might not boost fitness much, but smart, flexible, strategic social learning, the discount machine kind, that absolutely does provide a massive advantage. It's what lets populations adapt effectively.
So, thinking bigger picture now, what does all this smart copying mean for us as humans, for our societies, our culture? The tournament apparently revealed some really wild population-level effects, too.
It did. Some quite counterintuitive stuff. For example, here's a weird one. A population dominated by really, really good copiers, like discount machine, could actually end up with lower overall payoffs than a population with a mix of strategies.
Wait, how? The best strategy leads to worse results overall.
Kind of. It's like an ecological principle. The dominant competitor, the best copier, can persist even when the resource level, in this case, the amount of new information being generated by innovators, gets really low. If everyone becomes a super efficient copier who's left to do the innovating, you might end up with a population that's great at exploiting current knowledge but slow to generate anything new. It can sort of become parasitic on innovation.
Okay, that's fascinating. And then there was the finding that more copying led to more behavioral diversity. That seems completely backwards. Doesn't copying lead to conformity?
You'd think so, right? But here's the logic. While copying itself doesn't create new behaviors, it creates multiple copies of existing successful behaviors. This dramatically slows down the rate at which valuable knowledge gets lost from the population, say, when individuals die. So even though fewer new things might be invented, the existing good ideas stick around much longer and spread more widely. The net effect across the whole population's repertoire is actually greater diversity of known behaviors.
Huh. But at the same time, you do see conformity.
Yes. So more copying means more potential behaviors are stored in the population, less loss, but it also leads to fewer behaviors being actively performed at any given time. The population tends to converge on a smaller set of currently highest payoff behaviors. So you get these patterns of conformity, fads, fashions, everyone doing the same few things that are currently perceived as best.
So this is wild. High levels of copying give us both, like ancient wisdom sticking around forever, and really rapid changes in what people are actually doing day to day, like TikTok trends alongside Play-Doh.
Exactly. It's a paradox within a paradox. Social learning leads simultaneously to extreme durability of cultural knowledge, things known for millennia, and also incredibly rapid turnover in currently popular behaviors, technologies, fashions. It lets us accumulate vast stores of knowledge while also being highly adaptable and quick to switch to new successful variants.
So wrapping this all together, what's the big story for human success here, our whole journey as a species?
Well, the tournament provides really strong evidence that our massive ecological success, our ability to change our behavior so rapidly, the incredible diversity of human cultures, our huge knowledge base, the sheer volume of our culture, all of this seems to be a direct result of relying heavily but smartly on social learning. And it even hints that sophisticated copying, like discount machines' foresight, might be linked to advanced cognitive abilities we value, like planning and, well, maybe even a form of mental time travel.
Okay, so the huge takeaway here is copying isn't just kids mimicking parents. When it's done strategically, efficiently, it's this incredibly powerful adaptive engine. It drives evolutionary success and has fundamentally shaped human culture, human cognition, everything.
Absolutely. Which leaves us with a pretty important thought, doesn't it? Given everything we now know about how to copy effectively, what does that mean for our future? Especially now, in this hyper-connected world where information and copying it is easier than ever. Are we actually using our copying strategies optimally for the challenges we face now and the ones coming